we decided we were going to celebrate me being out of a cult, and we had a little barbecue pit outside, and I had this big book that was just like so special to me. I had had it for years, and it was tattered and fallen apart, and it was just like, I love this big book, right? And I ended up burning this big book in the barbecue pit outside, and we filmed it, and it was supposedly like my exit from the cult, and I was talking about how I was free now, and on the video too, it's humorous because I'm sitting there talking about how I'm free and I'm going to be so much better and all this, and I'm so drunk that on the video that I'm just like slurring my words, telling everyone how AA is a cult.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you are all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Scrump delicious. I don't know why that word came to my mind. From Studio AA deep in the heart of Texas, that was the voice of Sarah G that you heard at the beginning of this here episode number 270. And you are going to hear so much more from her in just a moment. But first things first, this here episode is brought to you by Juliana. I think she goes by Jules, actually. But anyway, Juliana, Terry, Todd, Kurt, Lou, Audrey, Anonymous, and Mary Lynn. And you ask yourself, what in the heck did Juliana and Terry and Todd and Kurt and Lou and Audrey and Anonymous and Mary Lynn do? Well, they went to our website, www.soberspeak.com, clicked on the little yellow donate tab, and they made a donation. So thank you so much, Juliana, Terry, Todd, Kurt, Lou, Audrey, Anonymous, and Mary Lynn. This here episode is coming right out to you, to you'uns. As a reminder, this here podcast, Sober Speak, it's a meeting between meeting at your fingertips. I had a listener actually write in a long time ago and say that, and I like that. Anyway, you can find us on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and wherever you listen to your podcast. In fact, you can go up to that little, what do you call it, woman in the tube, and say, hey, Alexa, will you please, I don't think you have to put the will you in there. Just say, play Sober Speak podcast, and guess what? It'll take off. All right, so who do we have this week? We have Sarah G. And Sarah G, we're calling this AA is a cult, and this is part one of the discussion with her. The reason I'm calling it AA is a cult is not because either Sarah and or I believe that AA is a cult. It's kind of a clickbait. So if you came in and you were thinking you were going to hear an episode about AA being a cult, there is talk about AA being a cult in here, but it's probably not the one you're looking for. But nonetheless, Sarah and I had a conversation that included discussing the time that she burnt her big book and decided that AA was actually a cult. So I went ahead and named this one AA as a cult. We discussed this on the first part of the episode, but Sarah G is the wife of David G, or should I say, David G is the husband of Sarah G, for whatever it matters. And a lot of you have listened to the podcast before. You're going to know who David G is, but she talks about all the twists and turns throughout her recovery. We discuss Sarah's summer camp experience, her Salvation Army stint, and much, much more. So forgive my giggling throughout this episode, but I was very much enjoying it. You'll notice I have a hard stop at the end of this episode, as we needed to break up Sarah's interviews into two episodes because we just couldn't fit it all into one. And Sarah G Part 2 will be released next week, and we will pick up where we left off this week. So at the end of this, as always, we will have plenty listener feedback. So enjoy Sarah G Part 1, AA is a Cult. Okay, everybody. So today we are sitting here with Sarah G. So Sarah, I'm going to ask you to go ahead, introduce yourself, give your sobriety date if you would like, and tell people where you live in this world, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Okay, I'm Sarah, and I am an alcoholic. I have been sober since April 6th of 2022, and I live here in Frisco, Texas.
So you were able, a lot of times I'm doing these, you probably know this, I don't know if you know this or not, but a lot of times when I'm recording these, we've, recorded quite a few, I'll be talking to folks that are across the nation, sometimes across the ocean, and so it's nice to have somebody just kind of, I like it when it's more one-on-one. In fact, I did all of these one-on-one back at the beginning because, people weren't used to Zoom and all that kind of stuff. But nowadays, it's cool. So anyway, welcome in.
Thank you.
So I want to go ahead and get this out of the way. We will note, those of you who are listening in will notice that I said Sarah G. And we have a frequent guest on this particular podcast. She's smiling and kind of laughing. And his name is what, Sarah G?
David G.
See, a lot of folks are going to recognize Mr. David G. So how would you be related to that man?
I am married to David.
Oh, you were married to David?
Yes, we were married.
Well, lucky David. All right, so this is Dave. So a lot of you have listened in before. You're going to know who David G is. This is Sarah G, his spouse. And let me go ahead and kind of set the stage here for why I wanted to have you on the podcast. I've known you probably now for, 5-6 years, something like that. 6 years, she's saying. And I met Sarah through David. David and I have known each other 15, 20 years, something like that. I don't know, for quite a long time. I was able to see Sarah share. That's what's that called? An alliteration, something like that. Anyway, I was able to see Sarah share her story about, week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that, from the podium. 1 week? Okay.
1 week ago.
1 week ago. I was able to see Sarah share from the podium, and I've also heard her share several times in meetings. Sarah and I go to meetings together. We both live here in Frisco. I have noticed that from my perspective, and this is very much a compliment, that you have definitely grown in the program. There's something different about the way you've been sharing this year as opposed to the way you shared a year ago or even 2 years ago. And it's very obvious to me. I don't know if it's obvious to you or not, but that is why I wanted to have you on the podcast. So let's go ahead and get into your story a little bit, because there's lots of twists and turns, as you know, and she's got a big smile on her face. Yes, there are some twists and turns. Well, let's just go ahead and start with this. Those who are listening in right now will notice that you gave your sobriety date, and it's April 6th of 22. That's not your original sobriety date. So I'm just going to throw that out there and then we'll kind of lead into it. All right. So you grew up here in Texas, right?
Yes.
Where?
Tyler, East Texas.
And tell me about that a little bit.
So that was just, I mean, I had a great upbringing, identical twin. And so we had a lot of fun together and just kind of had, an idyllic childhood.
And what made it so idyllic? What do you mean by that?
I had amazing parents, just that exposed me to a lot of really cool things about life, about culture.
Were you thinking they were amazing when you were growing up?
No, I thought they were losers.
Right. Isn't it interesting how that happens as we get older?
Yeah.
Okay, so you thought they were losers at the time. What were they like, standing in your way of you getting done what you needed to get done, or?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And just, they kind of cramped my style and I just thought they were old and weird.
Yeah. And in fact, didn't David somehow take me through this? You said you have an idea. You have a identical twin.
Yes.
Didn't he meet your sister first or something like that?
Okay. So yes. So David and I have both been married before and we're both towards the end of our divorces. And at the time, my sister was pretty active in the program as well. And he went with a mutual friend of ours, mine and David's, to a noon meeting in the afternoon, and ended up sitting next to my sister. And they spoke. Our friend Gary introduced the two of them, and then after the meeting, David told Gary that when he started dating again, that was the kind of girl that he wanted to be with. Yeah,
but that was your twin sister?
It was my twin sister.
Okay. So, and then how did you guys?
So then, this is interesting. So then it was about 2 weeks later, we were both on the Bumble, the dating app.
Oh, the Bumble.
The Bumble, yeah.
You know what? I've not experienced the dating apps. So is the Bumble.
That's good, John.
Is the Bumble similar? Gosh, I've heard of Tinder, then I've heard of Match. Is it kind of in between, or is it like?
I guess you could say it's not. Yes, I mean, back, 6 years ago, it was a more. I guess at the time, it was a more cleaner, adulter. You know what I mean? There was more. It was a more mature kind of way to
people. They were serious about it, getting into relationships.
Yeah, at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you're on the Bumble.
I'm on the Bumble, and the thing about the Bumble was that it was the first app where the women, you had to swipe left first, and then the other person swiped, and so if the woman didn't swipe, then you didn't match at all. Okay. So it was different than other apps that way.
Okay.
And we ended up matching on the Bumble, and I get this message from David saying, "Hey, didn't I meet you a couple of weeks ago?" And I said, no, but I bet you met my twin sister. And we've pretty much been together ever since.
Very cool. So just out of curiosity, now I'm going back to the app. I always go down paths like this. So you would have had to, like, basically you see a picture and a description of him, and that is what would would you go right as opposed to left? Is that kind of what happens?
Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
He was one of your several, whatever it is, or maybe it was just one, maybe it was just, we'll just say it was just David.
Okay.
All right. So David got selected, kind of, sort of,
yes.
right? All right. So we're on the Bumble, you and him meet. All right. So now let's go back to your childhood. You had this, it's okay. So here's what I know from knowing you, right? I know that you talked about, will you tell that story about being at the Salvation Army? Because and then coming out and seeing that 13-story building. Oh
yeah, sure. So after treatment center, after treatment center, after treatment center, my parents were done sending me to, nice treatment centers to kind of be pampered and all that. They wanted me to figure it out. They were really tired of my behavior. My addiction at the time, it had caused a lot of pain in their lives too. not only mine, but in their lives too. And so I think at the time they really felt like the best thing for them to do was to let me figure it out. And part of that was they told me I could not come back to stay with them. I was an adult, so I was in my early 20s, and they would not let me come back to their houses. The only thing that they would help me do was they would help me get into the Salvation Army in Tyler.
Gotcha. So you're in the Salvation Army.
Yes.
And you come out and you're looking at, I think it was something about a building that you looked at?
Yes. So I stayed there for 3 months in this drug and alcohol program. And part of it was like you got more and more privileges, and so it was in downtown Tyler. And so you got to start getting out and then finding work. And so I didn't have a car at the time. So I left the Salvation Army and I was walking down towards it was right in downtown. So in the middle of downtown. And I felt, I had a lot of feelings about my situation at the time, and looked up, and there's this, it was like a 13-story building downtown. And my dad's actually law practice was on the top floor. And also my mother's family owned that building. And so literally being able to look out of my window at the Salvation Army at this building, I was a little resentful at the fact that, they had like cut me off and wanted me to figure it out. So, yeah.
I bet you were resentful, but looking back, your thoughts are?
It was the best thing they could have done for me.
Right.
For sure.
Okay, so when did the drugs and alcohol start entering the picture for you? How young were you?
Young, really young. I would say I started first, time I drank alcohol, I was probably 12, 13 years old.
Okay.
Just would take sips of my parents' alcohol.
What about your twin sister? Was she drinking as well?
No, it was a couple years later that she started, and then we were drinking buddies.
All right. I've heard you tell that story also about you going to the camp when you were younger. Can you talk about that and about how that was kind of a big moment for you, if I remember right, the camp that you went to year after year?
Yeah. So I went to this summer camp every year for 3 years, and it was something that it was the best 3 weeks of my year. Were those times every summer. And I had, tons of friends that I had been to camp with year after year after year. And one of the things I think that really, I think we all have those moments that we look back and we're like, that something changed at that point, and for me, this was one of those moments for me where everything changed in my life. And I was a teenager at this point. And like I said, I'd gone there for many years, and my sister came along with me this summer for the first time. And I don't know exactly the full story, but I do know that we weren't there for very long, and they called us both into the office and told us that our parents would be picking us up. And I had no idea what I had done or what she had done. All I knew is that my world at the time was completely coming crashing down right in front of me. And interesting thing about this story is, so I left camp. My parents did come and get me, went back home, and living in a small town, where everybody kind of knows everybody. I had this sense of like a kind of a crisis of identity, that I felt like everyone knew that we had done something horrible, which, like I said, I don't even know exactly what happened at the time. And then I found out, actually about a year ago, that, because I asked my mother about it, because it's something that would still one of the few things that I would talk about, and I would start crying about it because it was so painful for me as a kid. And so I asked my mom about it, and she said, you actually didn't get kicked out of camp. Your sister did. And we weren't going to come back and get you after we came and got her.
Gotcha.
3 weeks later. So we got you both. And I didn't know that until about a year ago.
You've been to, I've heard you reference as many treatment centers throughout your life. So I mean, first of all, do you know how many you've been to? Do you know?
It's over 13.
Okay. So we'll just say somewhere between 13, 15, whatever the case may be. And so what do you want to highlight about those times in and out, in and out? I know you talked about that going to that one in Malibu at one point and they just wanted to kind of get away. But what what do you want to highlight about all those treatments you went to?
So I think that, there's a lot of people have different feelings about treatment and all of that. But I think that out of each experience at every different place that I went, I can say that I took something away from each one of those places and learned something there. Maybe it was what not to do, but I think at a lot of those places I learned things that I sort of picked up and kept in my back pocket, not being entirely ready maybe at a lot of those points. But I still collected all that knowledge and information and heard other people's stories. And I do believe that all those things, come together when we're ready and really help us to make the change when we are ready. And I think one of the things, about trying to get sober so the first time I ever tried to get sober, I had just turned 18. And I think that, being told or labeled as an alcoholic that young by professionals can sort of be a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense that, like, I think that when you get labeled as an alcoholic at 18 years old, I think that you sort of believe that. And so you're going to prove them right. Yeah, well, I'm an alcoholic, so that's what I do, and I know for me, that was a lot of my experience, was that I was put at this label on as a kid. And although I do believe it was true, I think that label can be dangerous at that age sometimes.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Let me do a little break here and then we're going to get back to your story. There's something specifically I want to know about. We will be continuing our conversation with Sarah G in just a moment. Just a reminder, you're listening to Sober Speak. You can find us on the World Wide Web at www.soberspeak.com. There you can find approximately, 270 or so other episodes you can listen to for free. You can also find the donate button on our site, which you can use if and only if the spirit moves you. Please keep in mind this is a podcast funded by you, the listener. All right, now back to Sarah G. All right, so I want to get to the point in your story that for me was gripping. And that is the piece, and I know we're kind of going back and forth here, and this is really hopping forward, but the piece where you were, you went to the Malibu treatment center, and then you got out. So and wasn't, if I remember the timeline right, and that was where you got into that hotel and all that. So talk about that period. Well, first of all, what brought you to the Malibu treatment center, and then that kind of period after that?
So the reason I went out to this center in Malibu was because I was in another facility in Texas, and they said that I needed a higher level of care. So it's a common theme in my life. But so basically what they said was that I had some serious depression issues and they wanted to address the addiction and the mental health piece together.
Did you agree with that at the time? Do you think they were just trying to, like, what was your thought at the time?
I wasn't thinking much. I mean, part of it was, I had stolen a bottle of Purell from the nurse's station. I took it to my room, mixed it with Diet Dr. Pepper, and I was drinking Purell and Diet Dr. Pepper at 21 years old.
Oh.
And so when I came out of my room and went and talked to a couple of the people that worked there, and they smelled it on my breath, and then I admitted to what I had done, they were alarmed.
Yeah. Okay. Oh man, we can find so many ways. How did you know? Like, did you just know that it was alcohol in the Purell? Had you ever done it before?
No. But there was nothing else available.
Okay. Oh, I mean, it's funny, but not funny. I mean, this is the kind of thing that people from outside of the program will hear us laugh about and go, oh my God.
I will say the nurse's station moved the Purell. It was not in the common area after that.
Oh God, what would they do? I wonder what they're doing during COVID. I mean, but anyway, we'll take that up some other time. All right, so you need this quote higher level of care now that you've drank the Purell, and it's time to go to Malibu, right?
Yes.
And I think you said you were like, oh wow, Malibu. This is.
I was like, finally, I felt understood and heard and seen.
I deserve and should be in Malibu, right?
Exactly.
All right, so you get to Malibu and take me from there.
So I get to Malibu, and it was definitely a ride. So I was in this facility in Malibu for about 4 months, and during which I caused a lot of chaos. I just was so out of control.
And I got to tell people this: people they can't see you. But you are, how tall are you? You are like, you're little. I mean, you are so little, right? You're tiny, and you're causing all this. It's like, oh my goodness. Okay, so I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but it's just, I want people to have the picture of this tiny little thing causing all this havoc. All right, so you're causing havoc.
Yes.
Go ahead.
And so, like, for instance, one of the things that I did while I was there, I threw myself down the staircase. It was inside. And I threw myself down the staircase because I wanted them to take me to get some pain pills. And so they were, are you okay? Are you okay? And they ended up taking me to urgent care. And the lady that took me from the staff member was like, you cannot have any opiates. You cannot have any opiates. And I was like, okay, yeah, okay. And sure enough, I convinced them to give me an opiate while I was there. And I was just, that was mission accomplished.
How much did they give you?
It was like one lousy pill. So 4 hours of my life for one lousy pill.
Did you seriously injure yourself?
No.
Okay.
No, gotcha. I staged the whole thing.
Okay, so you get this one lousy pill, you're causing havoc. So that was one of your stints during the 4 month. Anything else you want to talk about during that 4 months?
Okay, yeah. So another thing I did was there was a liquor store. So this is way up in the canyons in Malibu, right? The center. So you can look down and see the ocean, and it's a long way down to the bottom of this canyon where the center was. And at the bottom, though, there was like, I don't know what it was called, but it's like a grocery store, basically, with a liquor store in it. And so I escaped one day and ran down there to the liquor store. And they, like 10 of them swarmed me and took me back.
This tiny little thing you are. Okay. All right. So eventually we get out of this place. How did you get out? How did you get out? Did you get kicked out? Was it time for release? I mean, did insurance run out? What happened?
Yeah, I think insurance was, they didn't want to pay anymore, and they said it was time for me to move on and go to sober living and do outpatient there and all of that. So that's what I did.
All right. So, and there's some hotel that enters the picture at some point during this process. Do I remember right?
Right.
So, okay, talk to me about that.
So it wasn't too long after I was discharged from the inpatient center that I ended up relapsing a couple weeks after that. So I'm living in sober living at the time. Okay. Relapse, of course, I get asked to leave sober living and didn't have anywhere else to go. So I ended up going to this hotel called, I can't remember what the name of it was, but wasn't like the Ritz or anything like that. It was kind of shady.
And how did you find the hotel? Do you remember?
It wasn't too far from where I was living in the sober living.
Okay. And how are you getting money for things like the hotel at this time? Do you remember?
Well, I mean, I had to be creative, you know.
You sound pretty creative.
Yeah, I had to be creative. I do remember I got a credit card and I was so excited because it was the first time I had a credit card, and I didn't realize though that you had to, once you spent money on the credit card, you have to pay that.
It's how they like it.
Yeah, so that didn't last very long. Credit ran out, and then I mean, we do what we have to do,
Yeah. All right, so then you get to the hotel, and tell me about that period.
So things drastically from the time I left sober living to this point that you're talking about was just, a couple weeks, but
pretty dark after that.
It was very dark. It was very, very dark. A lot of drugs entered the picture that I'd never tried before. Hanging with some characters who were, I say they're shady, but I was right there along with them,
Right.
And just a lot of drugs.
And who's the guy on the boat again?
Yeah. So I had this friend who lived on a boat. It was not a yacht or anything like that. It was like, it was like a boat. I mean, that's all I can say about it. It was dark and kind of musty. And it was just this boat with a little bitty room in it. I just remember how dark it was in there, and the drugs. And it was scary, but it was also it had become my reality, of how dark my life had become. Mm-hmm. And I was in a really, really hopeless state at this time. And I had this idea that I didn't want to live anymore, but I wasn't going to take my own life. So I decided to ask this guy. I asked him if he knew anybody who could take somebody out. And he was like, yeah, I think I do. I think I might. And anyways, we talked a little bit about how much something like that would cost. And then he asked me who I would want dead. And I told him that it was me, that I wanted to pay him to kill me.
Oh my goodness.
And he was like, you are nuts. At the time, it seemed like a viable solution, though. I did not see a way out,
I mean, I'm laughing, but that is, like I said, that that was a dark period. So, like you're talking to a guy, a hit man or somebody who can hire a hit man, and he's telling you you're nuts.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so what? How close are you to getting in recovery at this point? Well, you're in recovery. You've been in all kinds of facilities, but how close are you to kind of getting on to the next phase, more healthy phase, if there was? What's happening next?
So this period of my life was probably the worst, and it lasted for probably a year and a half.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, are you communicating with your parents, your sister?
Very little.
Okay. Do you have any idea if they're concerned about you?
Oh, I know they're concerned.
Yeah.
I knew they were concerned.
Okay. All right. So that's the dark. But what happens at the end of that year and a half?
So I'm trying to think. It's, there's just so many different, like you said at the beginning, twists and turns. So I did ended up moving back to Texas and getting into a facility. And I want to say when I moved back is when I moved back to like the Dallas area, mm-hmm. and went to a couple detox places here and started on the path to finding recovery.
Okay. At some point, I know that there is, I think you got married, right?
I did. Yeah.
Okay. And I know your two beautiful children. So yes. Why don't you go through that period for me?
Okay, sure. So I ended up meeting who would be my first husband, the father of my two children. And I was not ready to have kids at the time.
And where did you meet this person?
I met him in AA.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So you meet him in AA, boy meets girl on AA campus, that whole thing, and you all, and you weren't ready to have children. And then, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go from there.
No, it's okay. So, so we get married, end up having this little baby boy, and I was completely in over my head with this little baby.
How old were you at the time? Do you remember?
28, 29.
Okay. So in theory, you're old enough.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But you were in over your head. And when you say you were in over your head, what does that mean? Like, did you just not feel like you had the skills? Talk to me about that a little.
Yeah. I mean, I was petrified of this baby. Yeah. I loved this baby more than anything, but I was also petrified of messing this baby up, of hurting this baby or leading this baby down the wrong path or not being good enough for this baby. Like everything had become about this child, and I just felt so inadequate to be his mother.
Right. All right. So you have the child, you're overwhelmed. Go from there.
I'm overwhelmed and end up about 2 months later, I end up finding out that after 2 months, he was a couple months old, and I ended up finding out that I'm pregnant again with his little brother. So the boys are just a little over a year apart. Okay. So now I have two little boys, little babies. And I was just so overwhelmed at this time. So backing up just a little bit, I had been sober for about 5 years before I met this man and all that. I had relapsed before I met him and then started, trying to get sober again. That's when I met him.
Okay.
So
you had 5 years under your belt at the time.
Yeah. I had a few years sober and was very active in the program and sponsoring and just, very involved. And
so just curious, when you think about that period of time and giving up the 5 years and such like that, was there anything that comes to mind that, where you went back out that was it an event? Was it a period of time? What happened?
So I've been engaged 4 times total. I've been engaged 3 times and then to my husband now. Other than my husband. So I ended up meeting this guy and we got engaged and he was not in the program or anything like that. So my life started to kind of revolve and I hadn't been married at this time, right? So we're backing up a little bit before this time. And so he also was my college professor and he was very...
Whoa, hold on.
Yeah, I know.
So this guy was your... This is not your husband, right? This is another guy that you were engaged to,
yes.
Right? Okay. And he was your college professor.
Yes.
Just curious, did that cause any sort of issues for him or for y'all? Or did it all... when it's in high school, it's different, right? But did it cause any issues for him? No?
No.
Okay. All right. So as your college professor, this happens sometimes, as we know. All right, so go forward from there. Sorry.
Okay, so like I said, he wasn't in recovery or anything like that. So the more and more we got involved and started to plan like our lives together, the further and further I got away from my friends in AA and the program and meetings and all of that. And one day I just had the thought that he drank and he was as normal a drinker as you could ever imagine, just like would sip on a cocktail like for hours at night. And so I saw that day in and day out and I started to think that maybe possibly there could be a way that I could do that, even despite my history. It's insanity like we talk about.
Had he ever seen you drink before?
No.
Okay. So did he get to witness that?
He did.
I bet that was a little bit of a revelation.
Yes, you could say that.
Okay.
He was concerned.
He was concerned.
But he also, it was interesting though too, because he was so intellectual, super smart. And I don't think that he didn't like me going to AA and being around all these other people. So he made this notebook for me about AA being a cult. And so I started to read all this research that he had put together for me. And I had become convinced that AA was a cult. And you have to understand, AA was my life at the time. It was everything. And I had this big book.
And did you say he put a book together?
He made this binder, like this, this binder of all this data and research that proved that AA is a cult.
Really?
Yes.
That's kind of like taking it to the next level. That's not just like a thought. That's you know what? He was a professor.
Right.
So, he's intellectual about it and wants to get the data right and the research right. So, okay, well, and so what was your thought when you saw it?
Well, I mean, he had me convinced that AA, or this research that I read did. And so we decided we were going to celebrate me being out of a cult, and we had a little barbecue pit outside, and I had this big book that was just like so special to me. I had had it for years, and it was tattered and fallen apart, and it was just like, I love this big book, right? And I ended up burning this big book in the barbecue pit outside, and we filmed it, and it was supposedly like my exit from the cult, and I was, just talking about how I was free now, and on the video too, it's humorous because I'm sitting there talking about how I'm free and I'm going to be so much better and all this, and I'm so drunk that on the video that I'm just like slurring my words, telling everyone how AA is a cult.
Oh, you're drunk.
I'm going to show you that video someday.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see that video. Did y'all post it anywhere?
No.
Okay, good.
But I acted like it was going to be posted. So I don't.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Sarah G. It was an absolute pleasure. As a reminder to all of you listening in, we will be back with the conclusion of Sarah G's interview next week. So be sure to tune on in. As always, if you were impacted by that particular episode, and who would not be, please take time to pause your device and share that episode or the entire podcast with a friend or family member. It may be just what they need today. Now on to a little bit of a listener feedback. Quan writes in, and Quan has written in before. He says, "Hi, John. It's Quan." And by the way, the subject line was feedback. He says it's Quan. He spells it Cuong, but we pronounce it K, like it's Kwon. He says it's Quan again from San Francisco, California. I'm a construction worker. I remember you, Quan. He says, to answer one of your questions you had, I love the feedback that you read at the end of the episodes. Last time I wrote in, I believe I had 7 months or so. I will have 11 months and 5 days. God bless you, Quan. He said, I'm still with my sponsor who has 32 years sobriety, and I am on the step 4 fear inventory. I listen to you daily while I'm working. Continue to do what you're doing. It's been a great help. I have been sending your Sober Speak links to my other AA friends. God bless you, Quan. Man, it sounds like you're on fire, and I'm so glad you're getting started with that fear inventory. Keep doing what that sponsor tells you to do, my friend. And thanks for writing in, and thanks for your encouragement. I really do appreciate it. Sue W. writes in and she says, Hi, John M. Last year, I moved to Waukesha, Wisconsin with my family. I have been sober since May 1st of 2012 for 10 years. I found Sober Speak while attempting to find Joe and Charlie's first step worksheet. Oh, she's talking about how she went to the website. She says, my sponsee relapsed after 4 years of being sober. I haven't been to any meetings in the Waukesha area since COVID hit. Requesting membership to the Facebook group Sue W. Well, Sue, you are in the Facebook group, and I I don't think I replied to your email. I may have, but I absolutely, I love Waukesha. I lived in that area for, I don't know, a couple, 3 years. And I know there are tons of meetings in that area. And if you need me to put you in contact with somebody in Waukesha, let me know. And I know you can get to some meetings. And but I am glad that you joined our super secret Facebook group. And congratulations on your 10 years. Now, this person, I'm not going to say the name who writes in, but I had to read it because I just got the biggest kick out of it. It says, so-and-so writes in, and they say, I'll just call them Jay. And it says, "Good morning, John. I hope this email finds you well. I was just listening to episode number 157, and I heard a gentleman, Jesse, say that he was a divorce lawyer. I swear God always gives me what I need exactly when I need it. My husband and I are both in recovery and are starting to go through the divorce process. I would love to be able to talk to the gentleman from episode number 157 if I could. Can you put me in touch with him? Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Have a great day, Jay." So I don't think the part about the divorce is funny. Let me go ahead and clear that up. And I'm sorry that you, Jay, and your husband are going through that and walking through that. I know that's a very difficult process. However, I just find it uncanny that people hear about these things. I mean, how would you ever think you're reading this on listener feedback? Someone's going to hear that and they're going to want to get in touch with that divorce attorney. That part just cracks me up. Maybe I should like charge brokering fees here. Something like that, and then put it back to AA, obviously. And I'm not going to do that. I'm just kidding. But isn't that just uncanny? Anyway, Jay, best of luck. Keep me posted, and God bless you and your husband during this process. And I hope Jesse gets a great client. Tammy writes in, and Tammy says, "Hi, John. My name is Tammy G. I am from Reading, PA. Yes, Reading, Pennsylvania." She says, by the way, I always wanted to pronounce it reading, but I know it's Reading, and I'm sure people do that all the time. Anyway, she says, "I just celebrated 9 years on November 20th, and I am full of gratitude for this journey. Thank you for allowing me to join your Facebook page." Tammy, the pleasure is all ours, and the honor is all ours. We're glad you're in there. She says, "I have listened to numerous speakers on the podcast. My favorites are Sandy Beach, Katie, and Charlie P., Mark Houston, and Marty C., and you too. I love your sense of humor, and especially your interaction with each of the speakers. You seem to always ask the right questions to pull the information out of them. Laugh out loud. I really can relate to each of them and their journeys. God bless you. Respectfully, Tammy G." Well, Tammy G, God bless you as well. Thanks for writing in, and I love all those speakers as well. It really is an honor to be able to talk with them, to brainstorm with them, be able to learn from them. And I get to do the same thing while you guys are doing it. And, I haven't been back and listened. I don't know. There's something about me going back and listening to my podcast. On the front end, I used to do it all the time, and mainly because I wanted to make sure it was, quote, perfect. And it never came out perfect, and I let that go. But I need to go back and listen to certain speakers, like some of them that you just mentioned there. Nonetheless, Rendell DMs on the Insta, and he says, "Bro, you're doing an awesome job!" Exclamation point, exclamation point. He says, "Maximum service!" Exclamation point, exclamation point. "Well done, my brother!" Exclamation point, exclamation point. "Yours in service from down under, AU." Well, Rendell from down under, crikey. Thank you for writing in. I sure do appreciate it. And you're doing an awesome job as well, brother. Max service on your end as well. All right. Bob writes in, and Bob says, "Good morning, John. I will not be able to attend he's talking about the live event we're going to have with Gary Kay. I will not be able to attend the live event as I live in Langley, British Columbia, and my wife might put the brakes on it if I told her I am going to attend. I had hoped to attend virtually." Oh, he's talking about actually coming in. Yeah, he says, "I had hoped to attend virtually, but will be attending the Southeast Regional Forum in New Orleans this weekend, and the schedule will not likely allow me to pretend even virtually." That's okay, Bob. We'll be having some more. He says, "Good luck with it. My goal is to get to one of your live events someday. Please keep up the good work that you are doing. I get much benefit from the Sober Speak podcast, and I very much appreciate your style. I remain yours in love and service on this, my 18,200th day of continuous sobriety, Bob W." Wow, Bob, that's a lot of sobriety. And I do hope we get to meet someday in person. I talk about it I'm going to be talking about this in some future episodes that I've already recorded, and I've been talking about it. I want to do some workshops coming up here in the future. When I say workshops, like a weekend retreat thing where, people come in and we work them through the steps, or they work the steps, and we bring, facilitators in, somebody like Marty C or whatever, to take them through those specific steps. Or through all of the steps over the weekend, or we just have speakers and get together or do whatever we're going to do. But that's been on my mind. I'd like to do it. It's just a matter of me taking the time and effort and figuring out how to organize it and all that stuff. And I know I can ask for help. I just don't even know what to ask for yet. But nonetheless, thanks for writing in, Bob. I sure do appreciate you. Torsten writes in, Torsten, Torsten. He says, "Hi, John. I am Torsten, sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous since April of 2008. I live in Zurich, Switzerland, where we've got a solid English-speaking fellowship." And he gives me the website it's called aazurich.org. He says, "My home groups are on Saturday, 9 a.m. and Sunday evening at 8 p.m. Zoom meetings. Join us if you like. No password is required." And he gives me the links here. If anybody wants those, just write to me at johnjohn@soberspeak.com, and I'll pass it on. He says, "I came across your page as I was searching for references to he's talking about he came across the website. We have a lot of stuff on the website if you want to go look around there. But anyway, it says, "I came across your page as I was searching for references to the promises other than the much cited and well-known Step 9 promises. I did a talk on the promises the other day at a YPAA meeting here in town. There's Young People Alcoholics Anonymous here in town." He says, "Be safe and happy, Torsten." Well, Torsten from Zurich, Switzerland, thank you so much, my friend, for taking time to write a little something into us. And I hope the website is helping you out. And God bless you, my friend. All right, everybody. That there is una más semana. I think I have that right. One more week of the Sober Speak a podcast in the can, as they say in the radio business. I'm not really in the radio business. I just put out these episodes on a weekly, but I guess I am. This is basically like internet radio, right? And I guess I am the quote producer as well, since I do all the editing. I don't consider myself really a producer or anything. I just do some editing and get this stuff published, but I don't know what the hell I am. All I know is I get to have fun with you guys. I did mean to mention, I don't think I did on the front or the end of this, if you want to be part of the super secret Facebook group, please go to Facebook and search for Sober Speak Secret Group, and look for that and ask for admission into the Facebook group, and we will get you on in there. The bar is very low. What else do I need to tell you? I guess what I was ended with. So a couple things. Number one, keep coming back. It works if you work it. And, what's the other thing? It was from page 164 of the big book. I really should write this stuff down sometime. May God bless you and keep you until then. I plan on being back next week. You never know, right? I could get hit by a bus. But right now, I plan on being back next week. God bless you all. Love you. Have a good one.